Today on Comicstorian, Daredevil versus a bunch of ninjas as he discovers what the master plan against Hell's Kitchen actually is. This is the Comicstorian channel where I break down some of your favorite trade paperbacks and single issues, and I convert them into a narrative, cutting out a lot of the fluff and allowing you to understand what is going on in your favorite superhero storylines. This allows you to go out and buy the next comic book if you choose to, adding it to your collection to get more context and more art. All alterations of the panel text and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Today we're going to be continuing our Chip Zdarsky Daredevil run. Now, when we last left off, Daredevil had decided to quit being Daredevil because he accidentally killed a man, and Kingpin had become the mayor but discovered that the crime families were now working against him since he couldn't legally do anything to them. So today, Matt Murdock and Elektra are going to work together to figure out exactly what is going on in Hell's Kitchen. Because if Kingpin isn't trying to take Hell's Kitchen, who's doing it? And why? Today is Daredevil 16 and 17, and if you enjoy this, please consider hitting that like button. Let's get into it. In the office of Foggy Nelson, he sits across from Joe Carrero, explaining that with everything that happened at the station, there is a chance that he can get off. But Foggy pauses, putting his hands on his head, explaining that he might be able to leverage some information that he has. You know the Daredevil's identity, and you know that he's wanted for murder. Looking across at his client, Joey pauses for a moment before responding. He is. He murdered my brother, Joey says quietly. Meanwhile, over at Elektra's penthouse, she sits up in bed as Matt pours her a cup of coffee. Still black, I presume, he says as he slips back into her bed. She smiles that he remembered, but pauses and points out how strange it is that all of the things that she seems to have forgotten. Is our history really just me with a fighter in a mask? She asks as she pulls down her coffee. Matt pulls away. He knows that Elektra has forgotten his true identity, along with everyone else when the Purple Man's children wiped out their memories of him from the world. The conversation is interrupted as Elektra's phone begins to buzz, and she checks her messages, explaining to Matt that she has gotten word that the Stormwinds have had a run-in with Mayor Fisk. It's later that Fisk looks up from his hospital bed, a breeze blowing through the curtains as he stares at the dark shape of Daredevil in his room. No, he says simply, but Daredevil ignores him. I'm dead, Wilson. This is a ghost visiting you. I just need to know, did the Stormwinds do this? He asks, and Wilson puts down his paper. His eyes are hard as he stares at his greatest enemy. You were out. I knew you weren't dead. You'll live until I decide otherwise. That you were out, and through the fire in my belly, past the hatred for you that sustains me, I was almost happy for you. You got out, Kingpin says, and with a slight smile. But Daredevil isn't playing with him. He takes a step forward, demanding to know if Fisk knew about the Stormwinds' order to keep the police out of the kitchen. Fisk pauses for a moment before he bursts out laughing. I was so wrong. I won't kill you. Hell's Kitchen will kill you, he says, and Daredevil turns away from him, leaping out the window, disappearing into the night. Elsewhere in the city, Izzy Libris orders her driver to stop the car as they pass a bar that has been destroyed. She gets out shouting for Hammerhead, and the mobster steps forward, cleaning the blood off of his knife. She demands to know what happened, and he tells her that they had a tip that Owl's men were working out of the bar. Tip was wrong, but the guys in there, they were still itching for a fight, he says with a smile to his men. She begins to yell at him for working in the kitchen, but he stops her, explaining that she wanted this partnership. This is what a partnership looks like, he tells her, and he finally walks away, telling her that he is in charge, and when they take out the Owl, he will be the new Kingpin in New York. Until then, Hell's Kitchen is mine, he tells her as he looks over his shoulder. Matt, meanwhile, doesn't know what to do. The city is dark around him as he sits on the rooftop. He quiets his heart, steadying his breath, reaching out with his senses, feeling the city around him, every bit of light and shadow of darkness, hopes and despair. Are you good? Elektra asks him from nearby, and he nods, turning to her, confirming that Fisk's heartbeat told him that it was the Stormwinds that hurt him. So what do you want to do? What are you ready for? She asks him, and he stands, telling her that he needs to hit them hard and give back to his neighborhood. She nods, holding up a flash drive. If you trust me, I think I know how to give it back. Meanwhile, over at the precinct, Detective North steps into the police chief's office. She begins to ask him a question, but he interrupts her. He knows that she knows exactly what happened in the precinct. Those dirty cops tried to kill him. He knows that someone has dirt on her, but she is actually a good cop. Finally, he turns to leave the office, telling her that he isn't hunting down vigilantes anymore. that he's going to work in the kitchen, actually help people, and stop the owl. And once I'm done with the owl, I'll be transferring to internal affairs, he says as he shuts her office door. That night, at the Sectotech building, Matt takes his hand away from the window, telling Elektra that he doesn't hear anything inside as she cuts the glass. You won't see any, she whispers as they move through the shadows of the building, explaining that the Stromwims employ a group of ninja guards known as the Drifting. They move through the building, quickly making their way to the server room, dropping down from the vents, and Elektra moves to the servers while Matt watches her back. He pauses as he senses their company. Damn it, he whispers. He knows that he's not ready for this fight, but he knows that he has to be. He rounds the corner, quickly seeing 3 ninjas blocking one of their swords, pivoting to kick another. He ducks under another attack, kicking the ninja in the face, but the enemy whirls around, kicking him hard in the jaw. He moves, blocking another blow before twisting and taking out the final 2. I got it, let's run, Elektra begins to say as she grabs the USB rounding the corner, but as she stops short, she sees Matt standing over the fallen ninjas. It's the next day that Quinn Stromwin learns of the attack on his server farm. He learns that $3 billion were stolen and distributed to various charities. He knows that that money is gone, but smiles as he opens up a folder to find images of Elektra and Daredevil in his facility. I'm interested to find who did this, he tells his assistant. At her apartment, Elektra steps out of the shadow, asking if Matt has a warm and fuzzy about their mission as he wraps a band-aid around bruised ribs. He looks up at her, finally asking why she came back to help him. What can I say? You've grown on me. The sad, broken puppy that I need to nurse back to health. But Matt can sense that she's lying. Her heartbeat doesn't speed up like other people, it actually slows down, showing her level of control. You took the money, didn't you? He asks, and she nods, confirming she stole $1 billion of it. I'm starting something big, and I needed a kickstart, she explains, but he doesn't answer, turning and walking out of the apartment. She sighs, leaning back up against the bathroom sink. It's okay. Later, she says with a smile. Behind her, the name Matthew has been written on the mirror in the condensation. The next day, the broke residents and businesses of Hell's Kitchen have come into a windfall overnight, the Stromwims' money having been distributed throughout the neighborhood. Matt moves throughout it, able to sense everyone's surprise and happiness over the incoming money. He stops at an apartment building and pushes the buzzer, asking Mrs. Carrero if he could come up. The kindly old woman lets him in, offering to get him a glass of water, heading into the kitchen. Matt tells her that his law firm received some money and that he would like to offer it to her to help out with any problems that they might be having. I know, she tells him, causing him to pause in shock. Joey told me. You're him, the man who killed my boy. Daredevil, she says. Matt begins to stammer out an excuse. His identity has been revealed to the family that he murdered the boy of. She stops, turning to look back at the man that killed her boy. You killed my child. He was my light, and he was on a terrible path. I have no doubt what happened was a mistake. I can see it in your face, she tells him as Matt covers his face with his hand. She tells him that Joey told her that he doesn't know what to do to punish Matt. She comes forward, putting an arm around him. Anyone can see. You're punishing yourself. And you should, it's only fair. My heart is broken. You made a mistake and he is gone. But I know that you help people and that you will carry this. I forgive you, she says, and a tear falls down Matt's cheek as she pulls him in for a big hug. Meanwhile, at another bar, Hammerhead hits a thug, letting him know that if he wants to sell drugs in the kitchen, the new boss will be given a cut. He's then interrupted as Libris walks through the door, flanked by her guards, and she tells him about the money that came into the kitchen and how she's decided to use it to buy a few more guards. I'm thinking about taking you out, she tells him, and he smiles, turning from the bar as his goons pull out their guns. What did you say? But she smiles as the goons turn their guns on Hammerhead, explaining that the new boss doesn't inspire loyalty within his men. The goons shrug, pulling the trigger, and Izzy turns away, walking out of the bar, leaving Hammerhead in a pool of his own blood. Meanwhile, over at Fisk's penthouse, Wesley steps out onto the patio to find the mayor staring out over his city. He tells them that they can move things around so that Fisk can continue to work from home. But he was supposed to go to the gala, and it will cause a massive issue with the schedule if he doesn't attend. Are the Stromwinds going to be there? Fisk asks quietly. Wesley informs him yes with a nod. So Fisk turns to stare at his assistant. Meanwhile, Owl is shocked at Izzy's nerve of taking out Hammerhead. He doesn't need her to continue to be an issue as he stands at his desk. He looks to Butch, his right-hand man, telling him that they need to take Izzy off the table quietly. Family. Butch, you know what to do, he says with a nod towards the door. The thug smiles, motioning to his men to follow him. Absolutely, he says as they walk out. It's that night that Matt finds himself attending the gala for the Stromwims. Having been the mayor, he's able to go to all sorts of parties. He moves through the procession line quickly, his cane tapping as the paparazzi cameras all flash around him. He moves through the crowds quickly, finding the bathroom where he stashed a different mask to hide his identity in this event. Meanwhile, Mindy moves through the dark city streets with her daughter. Tom catching up with them, explaining that his mother made everything safe for the family. Safe? She put us in more danger. I'm not letting myself into Belle, she begins to shout at him. But Belle tugs at her mom's jacket. Mommy, Daddy, I don't like, she begins to say, pointing at the three thugs as they step out of the van. It's okay, kid. Everything will be fine, Butch says from behind his mask, his men loading up their pistols behind him. Matt, meanwhile, is moving through the crowd. His senses are overloaded by the vast number of people and smells at this party, but he finally finds the Stromwims. Pushing through those who waited to talk to them, guards step forward, but Quinn waves them off. And you are? Una asks with a smile, Matt hiding behind his mask, telling them that he is a concerned citizen with questions. Quinn smiles at him. You don't seem like a reporter. You stand straight and wear that tuxedo like a second skin, appraising Matt as he asks what he is concerned about. Tell me about Hell's Kitchen, Matt says simply. Una nods and whispers to one of her guards as Matt begins to ask them why the police were ordered out of the kitchen and a gang war was provoked. The crowds begin to disperse as Quinn smiles, beginning with the lie about how they are merely business people. But who cares? If you have a recording device on you, we'll destroy it. If you spread the story, we'll kill everyone you talked to. If you give the story to the media, we'll buy the media, provided we don't already own it, he says. Una steps back, explaining that she only vaguely remembers seeing the proposal for Hell's Kitchen come across her desk. How it was the usual thing to drive up crime and bring the housing down, so that they could buy it and revitalize it. Quinn's smile disappears. We know who you are. The big bad devil, thinking we had plans to ruin your home. But really, we barely gave it a thought. Matt stands quietly. He knew the room was emptying, and he could sense the guards rushing towards him. The old him would have fought until his knuckles bled, but he whirls around, leaping over the first attacks, rushing for the exit. He leaps through a window, rushing out into safety, quickly ascending towards the rooftops. He got what he wanted, a reason. So the question is now, what does he do with it? What was his plan to take out the wealthiest family in the world? He stops on the rooftop as his phone is buzzing, her words hitting him quickly and his eyes widening as she tells him what happened. You used to represent superheroes. I need your help. I need their help. He took Belle. Mindy shouts breathlessly. Back at the gala, the Stromwims head towards their car, with Una questioning if Daredevil will be a problem, someone for them to worry about. Quinn shakes his head as he ducks into the car, believing that they'll have to speed up their plans for the kitchen. What was the name of the man we had on retainer? Bullseye? He says as the car pulls away. And there you have it, Daredevil 16 and 17 right here at the Comicstorian channel. Now, we bring you videos like this 2 to 5 times a week, and if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get them. We also regularly do shorts over here now, where we explain the history of some of your favorite comic books and comic book characters. And if you want to support us further and make sure that these videos never stop coming out, consider going to our Patreon, where we're making exclusive videos such as Spider-Girl or Batman the Animated Series, and you're getting early access to a lot of these videos. On that note, guys, I'm gonna head out and go play some video games. Thank you so much for joining us today.